Hello and welcome back. We are continuing our run here as India. Last episode, we really focused quite a lot on kind of the industrial efforts that we were putting in, especially along this river. The river does have a mappy bonus. To be fair, we are getting a little bit of bonuses over here in Sichuan and the river on the Yangtze, but one of the problems here is that as an unincorporated state, we are suffering a penalty to manufacturing. But I think what we're going to do is, this is the penalty right here from colonial exploitation. I think what we're going to do is we're going to start building a little bit more in China. Also, last episode, we had a great flood that wiped out a ton of our kind of efforts here. And so by building in China, we can kind of diversify at least a little bit. We were also running into some interesting issues last episode regards to qualifications. This building, or at least it was, is no longer is, profitable enough to employ up, but it was lacking qualifications to employ up. And so what we've kind of prepared in our queue quite a bit here is we're still trying to electrify, but at the front of the queue, in all the areas where we have a ton of available employment, which we want to target very specifically, we've added construction sectors and a good amount of universities, at least giving them to level 3 universities. With the idea that, if we sort by unemployment, you can see here, with the idea that we are wanting to build a lot in these places specifically to target and push down the unemployment. One, because the unemployment really negatively affects pop growth, but now it's even worse on kind of two fronts than it used to be, the unemployment that is. The first front is, if we come into the food security tab, the people who are unemployed are most likely to be in the mild starvation tab. Now, to be fair, looks like we're actually doing pretty okay here, but the effects of mild starvation are pretty severe, and so we would want to try and remove them from kind of that section, as it were, although it seems like we're doing really, really well in that regard, and part of that might be we've collapsed the price of some of these things, really bringing down grain and fish, which was a product of what we were trying to do last episode. But also, you have like the most economic gain possible from unemployed pops, and I think they are partly contributing significantly to our radicalism, having standard of living below minimum expected. The pops that are guaranteed to have standard of living below minimum accepted, if you don't have any sort of what is it, unemployment insurance, I forget what it's called, is going to be those pops. Since we last played, patch 1.8.3 has gone through, and this has significantly reduced the detriment from minimum expected or standard of living for the lower strata, so we are very, very likely to go up to very high taxes this episode. I'm not a fan of the nerf. I think that when it was before, it was 2.5 to the minimum expected standard of living and 3 for the lower strata. Now it's 1.5, which is an enormous kind of nerf to that penalty. So I think we're going to be able to hit very high taxes pretty soon here. In fact, we might even do it just to throttle up construction really, really hard and take a little bit of a crank. This is almost certainly going to be the last episode. We're going to see what we can do on the industrial front. Again, kind of focusing on doing some of the stuff we were doing last episode, like pushing economies of scale to 50, which is really advantageous and really gives you a big advantage over the AI. Also, to the end of kind of demonstrating some interesting features, we do want to fully connect our market. We want to make it fully contiguous that way, and we're already doing a pretty good job. We use very, very little convoys on port connections, which means we can use a ton on trade. This will help us to specialize a little bit more in more profitable industries, although right now we're pretty agrarian, and we do want to make a little bit of a pivot away from that sort of thing. And so that's what we'll be cooking up this episode. We do want to try and connect up to here, and then we do have to, at some point, get Egypt as a subject, who they are in our power block. And so we can use the enforce sovereignty over them mechanic, or whatever it's called, the subjugate block member on them once enough years have passed, and that's probably what we're going to do in order to force pull them into the market and fully connect everything from Africa, all the way to South China. So that's what we have in store. So we've added close to 400 construction back since we just briefly started, but I just wanted to add, as a frame of reference, we have 27 million gainfully, or 27 and a half gainfully employed, 58.7 million peasants, but the number we really want to reduce is this 10.2 million unemployed. This is what we're going to target. We're going to specifically use like basically 0 labor saving PMs, and we're going to try and get this number as low as we can before the end. So Zeppelins is going going to represent a huge tech for us, because one of the reasons why trade is kind of stifled, and to some extent we're actually able to do a lot of trade because we have a ton of convoys, one of the reasons it's stifled is because of low MAPI effects. And so even more than kind of other countries or other strategies, Zeppelins is going to be really, really nice for us, because when we're overproducing food here and we're trying to sell it elsewhere, we're trying to export it, we will be getting a bunch of additional buy orders from those places that are selling it, but they will underinform the price here locally, which will prevent this food place from hiring up. And so when we get more MAPI, it helps the market price inform things more, so this will allow us to export more of these goods and positively affect the price more. We're going to start exporting a bit more liquor. I think we're exporting it in quite a few spots, and then we are also going to export a bit more groceries here to try and handle that. So that's going to be really good on the MAPI front. Additionally, I think we're actually going to research cars. We've ragged on cars a bit, but if you haven't seen the automobile update or the automobile production has been buffed. Now, here's the problem. It does decrease engine output, so this means we have to build a ton more motor industries if we want to go this route. But this isn't particularly, it increases employment by 1,500 per level. And normally this is kind of inefficient per worker. The PM's kind of okay now, but for us, we are trying to fight unemployment specifically, so doing anything that is the luxury good chains, for furniture, clothes, and porcelain, all these add extra labor, the groceries add extra labor, and then finally the engines, if we are specifically producing cars, are going to add additional labor, which is something we want because we're trying to target unemployment. So we're actually going to pivot, and instead of going into extra electricity, we're going to go into combustion engine first, and also this is going to we don't currently have very much demand for oil, and this will also create a lot of demand for oil. The secondary reason probably being the overall bigger reason why we're pushing it specifically, but it already having a bunch of progress from getting one of the journal entry things that gives a bunch of progress is also another reason why we're going to choose to do this tech next. Laissez-faire pass is also going to be another big one. We have kind of already been, in terms of our reinvestment, we were getting to the point where the manor houses were no longer keeping up, and now that we pass laissez-faire, boy do they really not keep up anywhere near as much. So we're going to be getting way more reinvestment. You can see if we look at the investment pool or the amount of money you're making, and we'll let it wait until another Monday because it might change things up quite a bit. But instead of making roughly 50, 60K here and then having a slight negative balance here, our investment pool is so jacked up right now. And the reason for this is because we're getting way, way, way more free money from the multiplier. We have been trying to get on laissez-faire for a while. We're getting way more money from this 25% contribution pool efficiency modifier than we were on agrarianism. Even though agrarianism served us kind of well for an extended period of time, this giving a 50% bonus to aristocrats and a 25% malus to capitalists, had just gotten to the point where the capitalists were just barely worth more, I think, while on agrarianism. And once you're at that point, you are really far beyond the point where laissez-faire is going to be better. But in addition to that, we also get to slot in an additional company. I'm not really sure what we want to go for. I'm not really sure if they can acquire market share that well. We see this, the Indian Steel has gotten to level 30 here. We see this has gotten 50%, so it seems that they're kind of okay at acquiring market share. So we'll have a little look through what we can maybe push towards and try and find a good company for us to slot in. I think this will be the first time this run we've gotten to click the subjugate button, but we are going to be subjugating the Don Casa coast. We will lose some cohesion for an extended period of time, but the Don Casa coast will become one of our subjects, which is going to be fantastic for us. We are going to start working on Ukraine now, or we have been working on Ukraine kind of as the follow-up. We are hoping to extend it. We already have a decent chunk of leverage, but we're going to need to use some more interactions. We could guarantee their independence. I think we will. I generally like this one, and this will maybe help us to be able to get a block embassy. This is the one thing that we really want, so we're going to bankroll them. And if we get an obligation, we'll use that obligation to give us the block embassy. And those two things combined should be enough to get them into our block, but that'll be a little bit down the road. Egypt's going to be next up in a couple of years to subjugate as well with the same interaction. Alright, so we have an interesting inflection point. We can now subjugate Egypt, and we are going to take a look at what are our current convoy costs. They are 4,900. Egypt is going to connect the dots between Syria here, who is a subject of ours, and all of Africa, which is contiguous by land, except for this little bit here. And so once we click the subjugate button and they say yes, which of course they have no option to, we'll see what this 4,900 goes down to. So this 4,900, we see that we immediately get more convoys, and it has gone down by 1,600 convoys. So that's 1,600 more convoys we can use for trade. Now, currently, we're kind of overflowing a bit of convoys, so we'll take a look at what trade routes we can do, what trade routes look profitable, what we can buy and sell, this type of stuff. We are generally going to be wanting to export the luxury goods that we are doing, that we are producing, which we are already doing quite a bit, so that we can create a lower price on our regular goods, our normal goods, in order to drive SOL up. Although we are at a point where maybe we just want to exploit these other goods, especially clothes, because we have a company for clothes. The company's fairly strong. They're fairly big, so we're going to take a crack at doing this, but we're not going to export regular furniture, for example. We could also export grain. Grain is a bit of an interesting one because we have the really, really insano rice farms, which are just so efficient per unit of construction that maybe this is a good enough reason to kind of focus on this. They are receiving a ton of throughput. Holy snap. That is quite a bit of throughput. And so I think that maybe we export grain here as well, because we don't really mind building these rice farms up to level 50. You notice per level, or you notice 500,000 employees. That means they're employing 10,000 per level. Now, to be fair, they don't help us to decrease unemployment, which is kind of a reason to maybe not want to focus them, because they build over this arable land. But if it is rice paddy arable land, it fires 10,000 workers, and then we just turn around and hire 10,000 workers. So it's a wash, but on a per construction basis, these buildings are incredibly efficient because they are effectively two grain buildings. And the disadvantage of rice is you can't go beyond steam-powered threshers in terms of labor-saving PMs, but we don't even want to use labor-saving PMs right now anyways. And so I think that exporting grain, for example, is also going to be pretty good. I think that we could also maybe try and export automobiles. That one seems like it would be kind of a bit of in the maybe column, but we will export grain. We will just kind of choose the choicest trade routes, though, and then leave kind of the rest on the table, I think. And this way, we will be generating as much money from those trade routes as possible and look to try and make good use of these convoys. We also, as far as our company has gone, decided to slot in the Food Consortium of India. This is probably a mistake, but we wanted to see if, how much we could run it up with the birth rate a little bit. Currently, we're basically not getting any external immigration, and we've just been entirely based on birth rate. We have an enormous population. We're trying to decrease the unemployed. We're not being successful so far this episode. To be fair, we have to clear out a whole bunch of electricity, and the first wave of electrification is generally a little bit kind of rough in its implementation, but if we want to decrease unemployed people, this is actually probably a bad option, but I wanted to kind of see if maybe we could do something with this. As far as exports on that goes, I'm pretty sure we've already exhausted our options and are not really kind of going to be receiving too much more like trade routes that we already have, so that's a little bit unfortunate. We've also been keeping an eye on Great Qing here. They're an unrecognized major, but they're not that far from dipping under regional. We maybe could do one more war to smack them around a little bit and then actually subjugate them, which is an interesting thing, which would create a whole bunch of buy orders for our goods. So this is something we're keeping an eye on, and might be something, maybe we declare war on them for like one province plus some more reps and see if we can make them kind of get wrecked a little bit. The problem here with Great Qing, though, with subjugation of Great Qing, is that you don't want it to cause them to get the event where they just break into a million pieces, which can happen, in which case you kind of wasted your infamy. We might subjugate the Ottomans as well. This is kind of on our radar, because this is something we could just well undo if we weren't already engaged in a play. I think we're cleaning up Arabia right here by just subjugating everyone, but we can make them protectorate for a low price of 12 infamy. Just when I thought we weren't going to be really getting too many more events, we do get Ful Waldon Ki Sire. Hopefully I pronounced that right. The city of Delhi has turned out to celebrate the harmony between Hindus and Muslims with the festival of however it's pronounced. So floral offerings are placed in the city's shrines, and dance and song fill the streets. We can either get a pretty nice bonus, or get an even nicer bonus for the investment of 10k, I think we're just going to take the nice bonus. We just annexed one of our subjects here. We are also, one of the reasons we also don't want to go for subjects right now is we are currently annexing a bunch of our subjects, and what this is going to do for us is it's going to really raise their liberty desire, which we don't mind doing. You can see Baroda, for example, is coming up in liberty desire. We kind of want to rumble and annex a whole bunch of these guys. The main reason is kind of cosmetic, because it's probably not good from the perspective of reducing authority relative to other stuff we could do, but we want to have India not just be like a curled little thing on top of India here, and so we want to annex a bunch of these guys in order to get a nice big India kind of over the middle. We're hoping to do, and so now we're playing the lettering game in addition to the industrial game. Truly, the map painting, the lettering is a very important aspect of that. SOL is kind of stalling out a little bit, which is fine. I think that we're going to be hitting our stride pretty soon here, because we're just now kind of getting through a bit of the end pieces of the electricity. Then we have a bunch of furniture everywhere, and a bunch of naval bases. We want to try and push up our prestige. And another thing about annexing a bunch of these guys, and then we have kind of the auto queue, has a whole bunch of stuff put up. But if we annex a bunch of these guys also, the way that it is calculated for this number, in order to subjugate Great Qing, in order to reduce them to unrecognized regional power, the way it works is it's calculating based on a percentage of the highest, which would be us, or based on a value that is based on the average sort of prestige. So when we annex a bunch of other people, we raise the average prestige, and when we build a bunch of ships, we raise our prestige quite a lot. Hopefully, yeah, this thing has just been ungodly buggy in terms of the ledger, but we would be raising our own prestige by quite a bit. A big source of our prestige is going to be our navy. If we take a look at it, we should be able to see, where's our prestige on this thing? Well, it's okay. If we take a look at our prestige here, we should be able to see how much of it is coming from Navy power projection. To be fair, not a lot is coming from Navy power projection at all. That value seems incredibly low. Okay, that's why. That's our Navy power projection. So the 100 ships we have are giving us 400 prestige, you know, out of our 3,700 prestige. So if we just double our ships, we can get to 4,100 and this type of thing. This also raises the average, but not too much. Alright, we're kind of cooking, mainly focused on kind of getting the queue and focused on what we want to build here. We have most of the queue from the start of the episode kind of cleared out. We added a bunch of logging, oil, some iron, some paper mills, building up to a level 50 for that economies of scale, and then we're pushing the naval bases, specifically in places that have unemployment. We're going to cause a lot of employment, and we are going to significantly increase our prestige with this one. It'll give us more interest, and after that, it's a ton of farms. The food prices come back up. Part of this is us focusing on other stuff. If we take a look at the market, food price is now above, or well, it's not above 50%, but it's above a level where we can, you know, look to push down the price of food significantly, especially with the really incredibly efficient per construction rice farms, especially because we are trying to employ pops. Now, again, this doesn't create jobs for pops, so maybe it's not the best push, and maybe a better push is a wood, but we're already really, really pushing the wood, specifically in places we have unemployment. We've basically exhausted that option, and so, I mean, we can push like stuff like oil, but we don't have oil or really that much iron present in places where we have unemployment. I don't think we have much unemployment in Yunnan, if any, and so, or actually, it looks like we do. I guess we'll push this as well. So we'll push up the iron to level 50 in Yunnan and add a couple railways. The railways at the front of the queue are where we are building a bunch of stuff. And as far as crank up goes, we started on like 1K construction, being able to afford 1,500. Now we're comfortably affording around 3K. Our investment pool is growing by a margin that exceeds our negative balance. So our debt limit is actually going down, not even including the fact that our credit balance is going to really, really increase up quite quickly because we are building so many like really low construction cost buildings because we're trying to employ a lot of pops, and so we are going to look to push all this stuff up as well. And so we'll be breaking around 3K construction here, looking to come up, about to hit that $500 million mark For those of you who don't know, Baku, the state right here, has a whopping 240 oil potential, outstripping, I think, the next closest by 160. I'm not 100% sure. I do believe that the Trucial coast in its entirety, which, to be fair, it's split between Trucial states, Bahrain, and this little piece that belongs to Oman. I believe this has 80, and that's the next most populated. So if you have, like, a land kind of border to Baku as we do, this is a really good state to be going for. It does have mountainous terrain. You do get the pretty significant negative construction efficiency modifier, but also, like, I mean, you have 240 oil, So our Raja dies, leaving us with this industrialist boyo, and man, it is hard for us to be legitimate, even on wealth voting. We're moving on to census suffrage, but fortunately, movements and such have kind of cleared up. A combination of movements and ideologies of the guys in government have cleaned up in such a way that it looks like we have a pretty open avenue towards parliamentary republic, which is probably what we're going to do. We even have a pretty open avenue towards council republic, which is something we could do, but this would cause all of our overseas stuff in our subjects, all of our overseas buildings to get owned by the local workers there, which we really don't want to do, especially because we've had subjects for so long with a really big investment pool. I'm fairly confident we have a lot of buildings, even in these tiny little subjects here, so we're not going to want to do that because that would, well, it would increase their liberty desire. One thing is we are actually kind of tried to intentionally pump up their liberty desire with the hopes that they would deck on us, getting a bunch of these additional agreements, or timed modifiers from annexing people. The 1.8.3 update where this was supposed to be reduced didn't go through. I assume that's because this isn't a brand new run, so it was pretty expensive, but they haven't declared on us, which is a bit unfortunate. If we declare on them, we have to pay the full infamy price for annexing them. If they declare on us or join against us, we don't, and so this is kind of what we prefer, and so we tried to intentionally induce this. This might be a play pattern that becomes common, where you're intentionally trying to increase liberty desire here, but it hasn't worked out very well for us so far. We also did subjugate Southern Anhui, which is going to add a lot of buy orders for consumer goods to our market. It's going to add a bunch of grain and this type of stuff too, but it's mainly just going to pump up the consumer goods and also give us a little bit of an avenue for foreign investment. I'm not really sure to what extent our guys are going to end up buying there. You see some buildings that are owned by China. You see at least one, a little bit is owned by, in terms of the textile mills, is owned by us already, so maybe this is a good sign that we will have some profitable opportunities here, although we would generally prefer that they build locally and look and take a shot at our unemployment. Unemployment has been kind of coming back down, kind of stalling out, but it's no longer going up, so that's something, at least, as far as things go. We are still trying to fight it down, but we have something really big coming up, which is electrical capacitors, which we are going to get to put on electrical sewing machines and brine electrolysis, also an absolutely incredible PM, but this is going to give us a ton of clothes. So we talked about how we thought we could maybe go up to max taxes. Currently it's causing turmoil, or we're kind of just break even on the turmoil, so I don't think we want to do that. But if we just really tank basic clothing prices, if we take a look, that is one of the things they're consuming a lot of. We have the grain that we keep tanking down in price. I think if we push this, maybe we can manage to get the SOL to increase enough that we will be hitting the minimum expected standard of living, even on very high taxes. You could see SOL is climbing, so that's going to be a big inflection point. Even bigger is going to be the next thing we research, which is going to be compression ignition. We researched it for a little bit, but then we came off of it. It's going to really help that we had swapped to Advanced Research 3 off of Construction 1, although of course Construction 1 was speeding us up in that regard, because now we are kind of full ahead of time, or very near full ahead of time. We were not spreading any before, now we're back to spreading some techs, and the fact that we are really kind of the tech leader is one of the reasons why we want to go for the max tier tech rather than, necessarily filling out some of these level 4 techs. But things have been peaceful. Great powers have not really wanted to mix it up with us. We are really, really strong, so that makes a lot of sense, and so that's why we haven't gone for any mill tech. And kind of the last tech that is maybe going to be good, actually this maybe is better, macroeconomics maybe is better than compression ignition, but probably not. But that's probably the tech we go to after following compression ignition, just kind of looking to push the tier 5 text. That way we can maximize our spread while letting other countries research tier 4 text and the like. Here is the price of clothing absolutely collapsing following us getting the electric PM in the textile mills here. It's now quite low, so we're going to take a look and see what exports we could maybe do. We see that we have a lot of really productive exports that aren't going to eat up any more convoys because they're not so profitable that they are better sources or better places we could put convoys into. So we're going to put in a few of these, which is going to help to prop up our textile mills in a general sense. We are also exporting some of this stuff. Generally speaking, if you want to max profitability, it's good to kind of push both of these prices together. And we see here our luxury clothes have passed up our regular clothes as being more expensive, and so this is kind of the reason why we want to pivot towards exporting more of these than we wanted to before. We're still going to get a bump in SOL, but we want to make sure we keep the profitability of these buildings up, especially because this is going to encourage the import or the input goods. We're going to have really profitable opportunities for a lot of buildings, especially because of MAPI. So like if we take a look here, the silk plantation is really profitable, and it's really profitable per construction. We're not pushing these too heavily yet because they actually actively cause unemployment because we have rice paddies here, and these rice paddies per level employ 10k workers. If you do the math here, it maths out, and if we build a silk plantation, they'll only employ 5 workers, so it'll cause 5,000 unemployment. So we don't particularly want to push it. There's one state that would be decent for us to push it in, and maybe we should be pushing that in, and that is Punjab, which has really good agricultural bonuses, and on top of that, they have subsistence farms, not subsistence rice farms, that only employ 5k pops per level, and so you don't net lose per level here. So actually I think what we're going to do is we are going to make sure that we kind of secure some inputs and discourage our queue from building these in places where it's going to cause net unemployment. We probably should have done this earlier, but we're going to make sure we lock in economies of scale on all 3 of these on the buildings, so that you have 50 of each of these, so they will never lose the ability to get economies of scale. And then we'll put each on auto expand here, and that should be pretty good. We'll add a few railways at the front of the queue for them, but they should be able to make pretty good money and help to supply the rest of our country, provided we don't have like a massive flood or something like that, which would negatively affect the MAPI. The insulation from the flood would be to build these resources locally, but again, we don't want to do it for unemployment reasons. Rice, again, not causing unemployment though. So overall, I think we've picked kind of bad companies this entire run. We did slot out the food company, decided that probably wasn't it. Slot in an iron company, probably could have acquired a better iron company. We slot in an oil company, and I think that we're coming to a point now in the game where resources are becoming a little bit more scarce, and getting throughput on something like oil does seem really attractive, and so slotting in preparation for that. But I think the company that's kind of maybe going to be pulling a lot of weight, or would be pulling a lot of weight if we played the entire run on the latest patch where there's more market share, is just the steel company, because our steel price, okay, the market share is like roughly 50%, but our steel price, despite cranking up construction really aggressively, our steel price is kind of just even here, which is going to allow us to, keep ramping construction. We're at about 3.5 times what we started this episode with, which is quite a lot, which is the only way we can try and get out in front of this unemployment figure, which just keeps on growing and growing and growing, despite us not even having open borders. I had a moment of trauma, like the instant I saw flood, but it's in Lower Congo, so it's not that big a deal. We are about to pop off, and by about to pop off, I mean our line is fully erect and we're already popping off, because we're just a couple weeks away from compression ignition, so this is going to be a big one. The queue, we kind of have been doing a lot of what we've been doing so far, is really trying to attack, in particular, the places with unemployment, adding a whole bunch of stuff there. We have our auto queue going in a variety of ways, but we're adding a bunch of government admins, wins for a little short second, actually. The Industrialists were super useful with 20% bureaucracy, actually let us push up a lot of our institutions really high, and now we got to make up kind of that balance, but that was really helpful. We definitely should have had these pushed a little bit sooner, considering we were using principles that were associated with those institutions, so that was definitely a little bit of a leak. Currently just sitting on 3 mandate. There's nothing that we are going to really want to slot in until we finish some ahead of time research. I think once we get compression, ignition, and macro, we will probably swap out for something else, but we are about to experience the poppening. And also, unemployment is coming down now at a pretty good clip. It's down around 500,000, and so it's our pop growth is now finally, we've hit this event horizon where our pop growth is no longer exceeding our construction basis, and so we're going to be reining it in, kind of crossing the finish line here, as it were. We definitely could have been expanding a lot more effectively, this type of thing, but it's just kind of gratuitous at this point to just, considering what we want to do is industrialize and pop off. We also reduce taxes, and this is getting rid of a whole bunch of radicals. We maybe should have reduced taxes a little while back, just to trying to avoid the bonus, or sorry, the malice rather, of the construction on the turmoil. It's possible we should have gone with a much higher level of law enforcement as well in order to resolve this. Yeah, probably should have. We're increasing our level of law enforcement, at least right now, though, and it's just tough with such a large pop country to want to do that type of thing. But also, I just wanted to highlight a little bit where our construction sectors have been going. We built entirely on this Mappy River here, which gives plus 5% Mappy, really prioritizing that. There's another one in Punjab, and there's one up here, not Guangxi, but we have a lot of pop there, and we've also been kind of, if you look at, if we sort by unemployment, a lot of the places that have unemployment, we do have relatively high levels of construction sectors as well. You know, that's where most of our highest level of construction sectors are, so we're really trying to push it in those places, and since we know we're going to be building there, it's very effective for us to just add a bunch of construction there, because it will be giving us construction efficiency. To that end, I was actually thinking that the company that is unique to the EIC or the Regency, this 10% state construction efficiency, or sorry, 20%, this is really helping to override the turmoil issue. But I was really thinking that maybe we should have actually gone for and I think for our last company we probably will. It's a little themey, but it actually doesn't seem that bad. Tata, with the, not because the construction progress, and not, we already have industries for you know, textile mills and steel, although it's curious. I'm curious to see if this would cause us to really overbuild steel alongside our steel company. But this 5% construction sector building throughput, maybe that's okay. Just because we're really building in one single place, and the 5% throughput, not because it's like giving us way more construction, but because it's giving us state construction efficiency in these provinces. This is probably just too deep in the tank, but it's a little bit interesting to point out and think about, you know, in terms of building tall in these like river areas. I guess we could also just zoom out and just show the heat map of our GDP, and this also gives a little bit of an idea. Yunnan and Sichuan we didn't even start with, but as part of just like really attacking specifically the unemployed pops, this has been really a place where we end up building a lot, and so they're at 10.1 now. It's down from the start of the episode finally. Okay, so we immediately turned around and added something to the tune of like 1,000 construction, maybe around 2,000, now like 1,500, like 1,000. I forget what we were at before. You know what we were at before. It was less than this. And what we have done and put in the queue for a lot of industries is we are 50ing up a bunch of buildings, bringing them up to max economies of scale, which is going to be really nice. Notably, we are not just bringing up the currently tallest building to economies of scale, but we are attacking very specifically the unemployment in a lot of these industries. I think once this wave comes through, we will have like just, oh my god, where'd you come from? 500,000 unemployed. So we tried to pass Parliamentary Republic, and then there was this massive rev appearing. Since then, we started suppressing, in particular, the Royalist movement, hoping to really bring this down before we go for it again. But now we have a pretty nice-looking election in terms of who... It's looking like it's going to favor the Congress Party, where we're going to get a pretty good amount of clout on the trade unionists, and right now they're happy, so this is going to be pretty good. We do want to somehow figure out a way to lock in getting manufacturing industry throughput here and here, and also as far as manufacturing industry's throughput, as we approach 1 billion GDP, because we're still popping off, we ain't done popping, we've swapped a lot of our decrees. Now we're using a whole bunch of manufacturing edicts in all the places that we have really pushed up. In particular, we're not doing it in a couple spots where they're more recently acquired. They don't necessarily have the literacy rate there yet, and this type of thing. Some of these, we're incorporating all this, but it is really slow going. So, like, if we take a look, Yunnan has been incorporated, some of Persia has been incorporated. We're getting some more of that in, and as that incorporates and the mapping penalty stops applying and the manufacturing penalty stops applying, especially in the places where we have manufacturing, we should be like, well, we're going to hit 1 billion no matter what really soon. Just the question is can we get this unemployed figure down. We do decay at the very end here. Great Qing down low enough that we can subjugate them. Really expecting to see them back down. A big part of why they are low enough prestige that we can subjugate them is because they're in some sort of bankruptcy spiral. They're in a lot of pain here. And I believe that they almost always will have ideology or one of these that makes it more likely for them to back down. So in this case, defend the borders. So we didn't put in too many war goals, but we did put subjugate Khanate in case it does pop off. They are, of course, bankrupt, so they can't really fight anyways, and so this is just going to be a rather swift occupation here and enforcement, and then bringing, Qing and the Kazakh Khanate into the great big fold of the Maharaja's will. We should be about to hit 1 billion GDP here in just a moment, and boom, 1 billion. We did hit 1 billion while we were at war, but we didn't really show it off, and there it is, the 1 billion now. We, of course, have a very nice amount of construction here in order to hit that 1 billion, and kind of the metric we've been watching. I suppose we won't be getting employment down to 0, but now it is unambiguously decreasing at a pretty good clip, and so I would say that, we've had a great success industrializing India. Really just so many pops. We could have done stuff to intentionally stifle prop growth that would have made it a little bit easier to get to the point where we were kind of getting rid of all the unemployed people. And to be fair, the gainfully employed is way up. We're up to 65.5 million, well over the amount of peasants, which is a big part of why our SOL is this high. We did get on to graduated taxation, which is allowing us to push very high taxes here. We could get kind of onto parliamentary or council republic, probably, almost certainly. At this point, given our current government situation, is very much in line with that. But I think the thing to do would maybe be to try and get this bonus. So we would maybe want to just ban religion so that this guy's state atheism pops off, and maybe we can get the 20% manufacturers on top of another 20% manufacturers. That's something that's a little bit intriguing, but I think that we are going to conclude this episode here. And probably, actually, yes, the run here as well. I hope you guys enjoyed this one. We could push this one a little bit more, but I think we want to move on and do some other stuff instead. So I hope you enjoyed this. We are mainly trying to investigate India's flavor. We did get that, and then we decided to pop off a little bit here. So it really got nice to have a kind of crank up at the end. Really just like the first half of this run was just such a struggle under Great Britain. With the now nerfed, it got nerfed to 30%, but the 40% payout to them was just so brutal. And then it was only at like the very end here that we started popping off really hard. I think we started this episode maybe with like 300 million GDP and like 1,000 construction, and now we're on, almost 7,000 construction right here. And so, anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed. If you did, please feel free to like, comment, subscribe, do the YouTube algorithm thing, and other than that, have a good one.